It's not just like Papadopoulos drops in out of nowhere. You have all this stuff going on in the summer before we get the Papadopoulos information. You've got all this information coming out about what the Russians are doing with the hacking and the dumping of emails, clearly intended to have an impact on our political system. And then in the midst of that, that's when we get the Papadopoulos information.
Now that from a former general counsel of the FBI, Jim Baker, about our next guest. George Stephanopoulos says that Papadopoulos, I just got you in the Stephanopoulos, that would have been a fun story, that said he has only just begun to lay out the timeline of when he believes the Obama intel agencies were attempting to entrap him, and he joins us now. Now, George, what haven't you revealed to date is just, how many agencies were coming after you, one person, and something that they tried to get your girlfriend to do? What was that?
Oh, my God. Thanks a lot for having me, Laura. So besides the FBI trying to have my then-girlfriend, now wife, actually wear a wire to try and entrap me herself, which was completely crazy. She was an Italian citizen visiting me as a girlfriend, and they subpoenaed her and basically tried to flip her against me, which was incredibly bizarre. But what we believed they really targeted her for was because she actually knew all about Joseph Mifsud's connections to the Italian government and his connections in Europe, which we just recently found out today that the Italian government, under the presidency of that country, the prime minister, I should say, just fired the heads of 3 intel agencies in Italy. And I think it has to do with this person, Joseph Mifsud, who the president and Devin Nunes and other people have been asking the government in Italy to examine a lot more, because he's actually at the core of this entire scam.
Yeah, people forget about these figures. I mean, this starts to read like a John le Carré novel, the way this entire thing is played out. But you've heard the Democrats and what they're saying. They're saying this was well predicated. You had Brennan last night. I think we'll play the video. He was on television last night again and claiming that this was all copacetic. Let's watch.
I do believe it's important that there be an understanding about just how strongly predicated that investigation was. I was there in the summer of 2016, and it was very well predicated.
Well predicated, George?
I want to make it very clear that by the time that I joined the Trump campaign, before my name was even public, an FBI intermediary named Arvinder Sambe at a company I used to work for in London introduced me to this person, Joseph Mifsud, at a school, I should say, called Link Campus, which the CIA and the FBI trains at. Fast forward to April of 2016, the Australian government is reaching out, trying to connect with me. 10 Downing Street is connecting with me. And then, of course, which I find very suspicious, is that the DIA reached out to me at the U.S. Embassy in London, these 2 individuals named Gregory Baker and Terrence Dudley, just days before this infamous meeting I had with Alexander Downer, who I've testified under oath, and I've reported both to the FBI and Bob Mueller that I felt that he was spying on me. And something I want to, make clear about this meeting with Downer, I don't think I was just suspicious that he was spying on me, because in my transcripts to Congress, you see people like Mark Meadows and John Ratcliffe asking me if I ever was presented with transcripts of any meetings I had with Alexander Downer, Joseph Mifsud, or any of these strange people that were running into me, and I said no. So I think Congress probably has transcripts. They probably already know, and the president already knows that these people were spying, and it's going to be a big bombshell moving forward.
Ooh, this is good.
It's going to be great.
All right, George. Now you've gotten me really interested in this. Okay, I love the transcripts tidbit. Thank you so much.
And I am back with now former Trump campaign foreign policy advisor George Papadopoulos. George, the story that is yours is quite extraordinary. You had informants coming at you from several countries, including the U.S., to trip you up and entrap you, so much so that the Mueller team actually dropped $10,000 in your lap, and you left it with your lawyers. I want to turn to FBI Director Jim Comey. Former Deputy General Rod Rosenstein spoke out about Comey yesterday. And on Sunday Morning Futures, I spoke with House Judiciary Committee member John Ratcliffe, who weighed in on Comey. Here's what they both said.
So I do not blame the former director for being angry. I would be too if I were in his shoes. But now the former director seems to be acting as a partisan pundit, selling books and earning speaking fees while speculating about the strength of my character and the fate of my immortal soul. That is disappointing. Speculating about souls is not a job for police and prosecutors. Generally, we base our opinions on eyewitness testimony.
My former colleague Trey Gowdy likes to refer to him as Saint Jim. I liken Jim to an Avenger superhero. He's always the hero of every story, saving America time and time again. Of course, we know Jim's proud of himself, but the Inspector General found him insubordinate, and many of us believe that he either is or should be under investigation for violating the Espionage Act, for recording his conversations with President Trump in the Oval Office and then intentionally leaking classified information to start this investigation.
George Papadopoulos, your reaction, because you were part of the start of the investigation, but it wasn't just wiretapping and spying on you, it was also informants. That was a big part of the strategy against you.
Yeah, the first thing I'll say about Rod Rosenstein is I think he wants all of us to forget that his signature's on one of the FISA warrant renewals, which is currently under investigation now. So, of course, I think he's trying to deflect and put all the blame on Comey. But I do think that Comey, of course, was a kingpin here. No, you're absolutely right. The good thing about my case, and actually the origins of the investigation, considering so much of it apparently went through me, was that so many foreign governments were involved. The Italians, who were obviously coordinating with Joseph Mifsud, the Australians, who were obviously coordinating with Alexander Downer and Erica Thompson. You had the U.S. Embassy in London, which would constantly reach out to me, including these two DIA officials, which I believe should be subpoenaed by Congress, Gregory Baker and Terrence Dudley, who were making contact with me 2 days before Alexander Downer did. And then you had Stefan Halper and Nazra Turk and all these women and, like you said, money and all these type of things happening to me. But what I really think President Trump should do is the following. I think he needs to pick up the phone and he needs to call these foreign governments that were involved in my case and other people's cases, including the Australians, the British, the Italians, and even the Israelis to some extent, to find out if the CIA under Brennan and the politicized FBI under Comey were prodding these foreign governments to spy on us. Because right now, these foreign countries have absolutely no loyalty whatsoever to Comey, who's disgraced and fired, or to any of these former administration officials. So they can be very useful in this investigation moving forward now, because my case is so foreign in nature.
It's incredible. And you also believe that the president needs to declassify the FISA documents so that we could all understand why these international governments were also involved. Now, we should point out that you did spend time in jail, George. Why? You said they asked you when you met Alexander Downer. Is that right? Is that what you were charged with? Lying about that?
No, actually, it's even more stupid than that. I brought up this idea that Joseph Mifsud, this Western intelligence operative that you mentioned earlier, told me this information about Hillary Clinton's emails in Russia. And then all of a sudden, it's as if the FBI already knew this, because I suspect he was working with them the whole time. They basically then catch me in a perjury trap and say, oh, so how many times did you meet him and when? And because I hadn't seen the guy in a year before the FBI came to my house, they catch me in this perjury trap of when I met him. And it's just an incredibly bizarre story.
You said you met him in April, but it was March. And so you went to jail for 11 days.
That's called a perjury trap. It happened to me. It happened to Flynn. It's probably caught up some other people in this, and that's why I think so many Americans right now are looking at the core of this and supporting these new investigations into the investigators. So we have to get to the bottom of all of this.
This is incredible, the way you were targeted, George Papadopoulos, for being part of the Trump campaign through informants and spying, dirty dossier, and even money. George Papadopoulos, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Maria.